Good morning. Did the Fed pivot yesterday? Did Jerome Powell and the Fed change their policy look yesterday? From the minute of the meetings, it looks like possible. So good morning, Brenden from Homes in Orlando, and my good friend Joseph Dionne from Appli Home Loans.
Good morning.
Good morning. It looked like we may have a pivot that a lot of people were talking about.
Just a little, right? It's starting.
Just a little. Just a little. Powell came out yesterday at the news conference and said that it's not how fast we go, but at what is the ultimate level.
Yep.
So that put a lot of people in a good mood. The betting on the street went heavily down to a half a point, which should probably be coming out later today, probably around noon, 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at maybe not having possibly any increases going into next year, to possibly even just a slower pace of maybe a quarter at a time.
Yep.
But the governors agreed that there will not be a decrease next year, though.
Yeah, that was interesting too, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
That's going to really impact a little bit because, I think like last month when we saw a lot of that change, like a lot of it was, well, maybe we're going to decline. And we've seen a lot of the adjustments on the mortgage markets have been what's going to happen next year.
Mm-hmm.
So he really was, we got a little bit of an idea of where they're thinking about going. And I'm curious because if we don't see rate cuts next year, we'll see rates level off and probably drop a little bit.
Yep.
But we're not going to see that big drop that we thought we might have saw.
Yeah, that a lot of people have saying, oh, we'll probably get back down into the fives. So if we're actually doing more of a stabilization type situation, and if that happens, I just think, like you said, we're going to see a leveling off, and we're not going to see, hopefully we won't see the heart attack jumps up and down that we've seen for the past, year. Jumping quarter point this day, coming back quarter point that day, because that's been kind of crazy.
It's been really tough. And I had a meeting with the real estate team on Monday or Tuesday, excuse me. And they were like, well, how much do rates change? And I showed them my email and I said, well, look at this. And I said, and I just filter rate, like price change. And I was like, and they just saw, and like just from Tuesday alone, I had like 30 something emails. Like multiple lenders had adjusted rates multiple times during the day. Like, and we joke like, well, it's hard. Like you talk to a client on Monday and, 5 years ago, I used to be able to I would not even have to open a pricing sheet. Yep. I'd be like, what's your credit score? 640. We're going FHA. We're going to go up, and this is what you are. And I would be spot on to a T. I could almost estimate how much of a credit they were going to get back if we went up an 8, right?
Uh-huh.
It was just the way the market was. And now it's like, okay, wait, I got to price this up. And like, and that's just what it is right this minute, because it could change in an hour. Like, and I have that conversation with clients. Like, they're like, hey, let me think about it. And I've said, we don't really have time to think about. I hate to be that tight on it, but it's like, are you comfortable? Like, let's lock it, because rates get worse a lot faster than they get better.
Yep. And it's interesting because I wanted to pull up the 10-year T, because we bring this up all the time. And you look at it right here. This is the 13th. Look at this dive we had on the 13th. And like, boom, that hurt.
That was when they announced inflation numbers, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was good for consumers in the mortgage industry. But then you saw us slowly doing that creep back up, which is what we see a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, within a couple days, actually within 2 days span here, hit a bottom 3.4 and came right back up to 3.5.
Yep.
So you're seeing, there's there's so many shifts, like you said, during the day. And then, with the Fed coming out, came back down. Expectations. Here we go. Expectations of the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Wasn't quite. It was good, but it wasn't quite as good. So you know what? We're going to creep back up here a little bit today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just you just got to watch this, and sometimes I'll actually take a snapshot of this because just like other agents asking, you get buyers going, what? Why was my rate this, and now they're quoting me this?
Yep.
Well, here, let me show you. Let me show you what happened today.
Exactly. Yep.
Sometimes until they see it on paper, they don't understand it.
Yeah. And I can understand, right? Like this is not what they do every day, right? And that's the big key. And that's the craziness of where I think what I heard from Powell yesterday kind of gives me some hope that, okay, we are going to see some leveling off. We're going to see some stabilization. And anytime you see the market kind of flatten, we've been so volatile that everybody's been more conservative. So there's a good chance that we see Dow losing 700 points. Great.
As recession fears grow.
But
that's breaking news.
But when you see that leveling, so right now, because of volatility, all these lenders are being more cautious with their rates. So the moment we see the 10-year T, we see the bond market start to stabilize and not make these big adjustments like we see right here daily, we'll start to see those investors being those lenders that are those rate makers that will say, okay, we can get a little bit closer, a little bit more aggressive because we know we're not going to see a massive shift. And what people don't realize is when they make these adjustments, the reason why they're more conservative is if they guess wrong,
they get hurt big time.
That's millions of dollars that they lose. That's the crazy part, right? It's not, it's not like $1,000 on this loan. No, it's millions of dollars because there's thousands of loans that are being impacted.
Yep.
That's
they're all pooled together.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's interesting that this just came up. Growing recession fears. If there's a recession fear, what should the Fed be doing? Tapering back the increases.
Yep.
And but they're in such a situation. It's such a double-edged sword because inflation numbers were better. They still suck.
Yeah.
They still suck. We're still sitting at 7% inflation rate.
Yeah, it's just it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, right?
You're jumping like this because it wasn't as bad. When you've got a target of 2% and you're hitting 7%,
it's not that bad.
We're in the margin of error.
Like that. That's like your kid coming home from school and being like, and you've been like, how'd you do on your test? He's like, I didn't do as bad as I thought. I got a D.
Yeah.
It's still bad. Still not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I was going to get an A, Dad, but I got a D. How could you expect to get an A?
That's Powell right now. No.
Yeah, it is. Because the Fed always wants to try and do a soft landing.
Yeah.
And, my 56 years, I don't think I've ever seen a soft landing. They always, it's the slam on the brakes and hope not to hit the car in front of you.
Yeah.
Hope you left enough distance.
Yep.
That's the soft landing to them. Hey, if I make it by an inch, I've done a great job.
Exactly.
And it just, I don't want to be in his shoes because he's really, he's in a tough spot. He's trying. They're trying to do a good balance, but it's still it's not nowhere close to where we need to be. Nowhere near where he's. That's why sometimes it's like they say. Sometimes it's better to just bite the bullet. Maybe he should have gone. To 6 or 7%. Just pushed it up there. Totally slammed on the brakes of the economy and, let it restart,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's not an envious position, and we give him a hard time. We do. Everybody does, right? Like,
Mhm.
but none of us would want to be in his shoes, obviously, and none of us really would want to be in the Fed's shoes of trying to navigate what we're navigating right now. And the hard part is when you look across the world, like as a whole, everybody's dealing with this.
Yeah,
Every
there's not.
world economy is like every country, like nobody's really the exception. Nobody's really doing some like phenomenal like it's like kind of like we're the best of the worst right now. Like
Yeah, yeah, it really is that way. I mean, you look, with the news coming out, our dollar's taking a huge dive.
hmm
I think we're peaked on the Dixie at 1.14, and we were down to 1.3 or 1.2. That's a steep, decline in the value of the dollar. But we're still sitting higher. I mean, we're still kicking the butt out of the yen.
yeah.
Still we're still kicking the butt out of the EU.
Yep.
You know, China really isn't in good shape. But they're supposed to restart their economy. And that's there's all those concerns there. It's like, okay, if they start their economy back up, get away from the zero COVID policy they have,
Oh
all
my
of a sudden
goodness.
there's a pull on the oil. Does that shoot our oil price back up per barrel?
hmm
And do we
Yep.
see our gas prices shoot back through the roof again? Boom, there goes your inflation
Yep.
numbers
Yeah.
back up.
It's definitely like, and that's a prime example right there. We do live in a world economy now.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no like US doesn't live on its own.
No.
There's people pulling, strings are being pulled in every country by other countries, and things that something happens in China or Russia, Ukraine, Britain, all these things have an impact on us.
Yep. Yep. So it's just you sit there and try and analyze it, and guess the best you can and get up and work your butt off.
Yeah, there you
it's
go.
about it's about all you can do. So, and then one thing I wanted to go over with you this morning. I saw this article that came out this week, because you and I have been talking how we in Florida have held our numbers better than any place
hmm
in the country, and this was put out by Fox Business News, and there was a Redfin surveyed 2 million people, and Florida is still the number one place to move to, and that's why one of the reasons why we have not seen the price decreases that everyone else has seen.
Yep.
And for us, number 10,
Orlando.
Orlando.
There we go.
So as long as we've continued to get the influx of people and have all these traffic jams that we have, it's going to help to stabilize our
Yeah.
market. It goes back to basic economics. Supply and demand is what it's at, and it goes into this week's numbers. This is probably the biggest one. Our single family inventory has decreased again by 56.
We're
So
hitting
our
that holiday
inventory-
time, so we're not seeing new listings,
Yep.
but we're seeing the old ones pop off.
Yes.
Like,
Yep. Yep. And I think to really see, some a big push even further down is you really got to get that up to 7,500, 8,000 and above as far as inventory.
Yeah.
Because we're still sitting, total inventory. I think it's, probably 40% below average, somewhere in that ballpark. Maybe as much as 50% below average.
Okay. Yep.
So there's still a gap there in the normal inventory that we need. So that, as long as that stays where it's at, we're going to continue to see this, that stabilization of points or of pricing, and the median price, went down 3.7, but we've seen that kind of jump
Yep.
week to week, up and down.
Still over 400.
Yeah. And then our, first week, it's always probably one of your slowest weeks, had 315 sales.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the pricing, we're holding steady original to sales price. Last week, we're sitting right there at that 92, 93%.
Mm-hmm.
And in the final, sitting around that 96%.
Yep.
So we've gotten kind of consistent. So you're seeing, and I think it's just residual from when you can comp out a house, you go back generally 6 months, but you kind of can't do that these days because the market 6 months ago was so much different than it is today. It's great for the appraisal because you can use it, but because our demand has dropped, you're not going to get that price. That's the peak price. Days on market, stayed steady this week. So then again, here when you graph it out, we're sitting in a nice range. We know relatively where everything's going to sit as far as median price. And then our weekly sales, we dropped a couple times down to around 200, jumped back up to 4. Now we're sitting right in the middle at 3.
Yeah.
So average wise, I think going through probably until February, beginning of March, when we start seeing those spring buyers. I think we're going to sit at that average of around 400 on a weekly basis, someplace between 350, 400.
Yep.
Unless the market just likes what Powell does or something economically comes out and we see another quarter point interest rate drop, something like that. For the first time in maybe, I think since September, I think they actually saw an increase in mortgage applications. So maybe we've found a spot where people can still feel like they can still afford that 7%. They just felt like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's really tough. Yeah. And I think we're seeing the market because we are seeing it, as much as it's still extremely volatile, we're seeing some of that. We're not seeing the 7. So, and it's really hard to bite. And I think we're also seeing a lot of people that when it was 2.5 and 3, and then they saw it jump to 4, 5, 6, they saw it jump so fast. They said, whoa, it's going to come back down.
Yeah.
And I think now those buyers are realizing, wait a minute, it hasn't come back down.
No.
And
if I want a house, and I tell you what does help buyers when they will track the houses. They'll sit there and they'll look at, and you can see it. They keep watching the same house. They pull it up every 2 days just to see.
Yep.
And they're watching for those price decreases because it's funny because this week I got a call. They've been watching a house in Deltona.
Yep.
It was listed at 340, and they were watching. 340. They felt it was just too much. It dropped to 325. They're like, let's go see it. I'm like, okay. Consumers are very smart. They've got access to all this information. And they're utilizing it. And they know that the market's a little bit slower, and that they can take their time to find it. I still have clients who inventory wise can't find what they're looking for at the same time. We got a little bit more selection, but it's just not what they're looking for.
Well, I think it's still too, like you said, we've got more selection, but we still have to play into it's a massively different price point, or what you get for your money is massively different than what it was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that is it is hard to fathom. When I bought my house, I didn't think that I thought we got a good deal, but it still was like, man, I'm going to spend this much money. And it's not even what I want exactly. I felt like we could have gotten more, and I bought 6 years ago. I can only, right? They're probably dealing with, they're paying even more for that house going, man, 400,000, this is all I get.
Yeah. Yeah. Showed one yesterday, 550 over in Lake Charm in Oviedo. Nice little neighborhood, set off to the side, no through traffic, anything like that. But it needed updating.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, I don't want to spend $550 and then have to come in, and what she was talking about, she's probably talking about $100,000 worth of renovations.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, that just doesn't make sense, because
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to get, you're just not going to get that out of it.
Yeah.
Down the road.
Yep.
So
I think you're right. And that's the hard part is, with where you are on a lot, like, and we're dealing with it right now, my wife and I, it's like, we're looking at renovating our home, but it's kind of like, we've got about 100 to 120 grand of renovations we want to do. And we're like, and most of it's not even stuff that it's like, all right, well, we've got, they knocked down ceiling, but the people that did it beforehand didn't do it the right way. So it's
do a good
down.
job.
So now we got to redo it. And it's like, okay, well, that's going to cost 12 grand to do the whole house, but it's going to add zero value to the house.
Mm-hmm.
In essence, like, like that's not $1. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, I want to take this drop down ceiling and lift it in the kitchen because it looks like it's, 80s style, and the house was built in the 60s and I want to modern, get a nice little, so that's going to cost some money. And it's like, you start adding that and it's, well, these are renovations to make it our forever home.
Yeah.
Not to sell in 2 years. Like, we're not going to get the dollars out that we're going to put into it. And I think that's the hard part is when you're spending, like you said, you got a client, 500 plus thousand. And then they're like, man, I got to put like, if you would have told someone 5 years ago, you're going to pay $500,000, they're going to be like, I better not have anything to do to the house.
Yep.
Like, that's like walk in the door, fully remodeled, perfect, everything done to a T. They wouldn't even want to repaint a bedroom for $500,000 5 years ago. But the market's different and the pricing's different. And we're going to continue to see that because people are still moving to Florida.
Yep. We're still the top destination. 5 of those top 10 on that list were Florida.
Yeah, and we can take out Sacramento and San Diego. Those are probably just Californians moving from other side of the state.
Yes. So that's the key is as long as we have the influx, we're not going to get that decrease that other areas of the country are going to see. And as long as our inventory stays at the level, because with all my driving around that I do. You don't see the builders pulling back here.
Yeah.
I was going along the backside of Sanford Airport, and you've got Land C, new townhome development off behind there. You've got Pulte with a new development right there.
Yeah.
And I was out in Davenport, and they're putting up more new developments out there. So you're still, they're giving incentives, but I haven't really seen the pace seem like it's slowing down as much as I thought it would be.
Well, where I'm seeing like the big incentives are in the communities. Like you're seeing, like it used to be like if Pulte was doing incentives, it was for all of Pulte communities in Central Florida. It was the same. Now, and I just listed Pulte as a random. Now it's community. Like now it's like, oh, well, this community's got these incentives. But if you go to the same builder in another community, they may not have any incentives because that other community is selling. They're only putting those incentives, and those incentives where I'm finding it are those neighborhoods that they kind of like, they went just outside where they probably should have. And they were like, like if we continue to see the growth, we're going to be great. But we're going to be fine. And the community, like the surrounding areas will grow as we build. But then we've seen that kind of taper back a little bit. And now they're like, all right, well, this community is not selling as fast as we thought it would, but we want to get it off our books so we can move on to another project.
Yeah.
Like they're not wanting to stop building. They're just wanting to close out that development so they can move their attention because they only have so many builders and contractors and workers that can manage a project at a time. They can't just pop open another one.
Yep. Very true. Very true. Well, that was a good one this morning, and appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be back next Thursday, right before Christmas. Then I think we're going to take the break between.
Are we going to do our 2023 projections next week? Are we gonna put ourselves out there and actually be like, we could be right, we could be wrong. We might archive this.
Are we putting a bottle bullet on it? Who's right?
Fair enough. All right. I look forward to next week, and thanks so much for everybody that tuned in. Well, if you like it, like the post. If you're on Facebook,
hit the thumbs up. Appreciate it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see y'all next week. Take care.
Sounds great, guys.
Bye-bye.